So this is probably all review. I'm going to go through it real quickly because you probably heard it 15 different times in the past couple days. 11AC is coming. We're all working on it. That's pretty much obvious. Draft 2 has been ratified. Draft 3 is being worked on. We're expecting the final standard end of next year. So it's going to be a little while. It's going to be exactly like 11N. You can see APs based on the draft standard. The spec is written, has crazy amounts of throughput in it. In reality, we're not getting those anytime soon. It's a cold, hard fact of what's going on. The spec is written supports 7 gigs of throughput. Part of that's coming through 8 spatial streams, and part of that's coming through 160 megahertz channels. You're not getting either of those in phase 1. The first generation of APs you see are going to be 3-stream products. So it's going to be similar performance. You are going to have a faster order of modulation, or a higher order of modulation. You get 256 QAM. So if you have a strong signal strength, about 30 to 35 dB, you should be able to get a 30% performance.
How many of clients do you believe that will support that kind of performance?
Supports 256 QAM?
Yeah.
I think all the 11AC clients will. It's part of the standard. So it's a mandatory part of the standard.
Here's another question. When do we see
AC clients? That is a much better question. So I'm going to hop ahead a few phases. Crap, I don't have the slide in here. So ABI Research did, we have some slides from them and a few other people, where they're basically saying we're looking at 2013 11N is still going to be the most predominant. 2014 11AC is going to become the default standard. So it's really going to be 2014, 2015 before all the clients start to show up. We may start seeing a couple of clients at the end of this year. Qualcomm back in E3 in January was showing off 80 megahertz single stream clients with 11AC, the chips for tablets. We may start to see those show up in some of the tablets towards the end of this year, but obviously it's not in the iPhone 5, it's on some of the other big clients that are coming out right now. I'd expect Christmas buying season next year is when we're going to start to see the big show. I think there'll be some early adopters before then, but end of 2013 is when I'd expect to see most of the clients. The Soho APs have already started showing up. Broadcom, Belkin, Buffalo, D-Link, Netgear all have Soho APs. Some of those can run in bridge mode, so you can pretend there's a client now, but I'm not aware of any 11AC client for real out there. So a couple things just real quickly. So 160 megahertz channels aren't going to be coming in the first phase. You're going to get 80 megahertz channels. 160 megahertz channels will probably never be useful anyway. We'll come back to that in 1 second. Multi-user MIMO is the coolest feature in AC. It's freaking awesome. It's probably going to be 2014, 2015 before we see any chipsets that support it. The idea is basically, if you have a 4-stream AP, you can put individual streams to individual clients. You start to get some parallelism in the downlink side from the AP. Not the uplink side. The client doesn't get to take any advantage uplink from it, just downlink from the AP to the client. All of your smartphones won't be making everyone else wait. Right? 4 of your smartphones can download at the same time, essentially. The channels have a few issues. So this is just a quick channel diagram for the US. A few things I want to point out. The bottom rows are 20 megahertz channels. We had a bunch. It was awesome. 40 megahertz channels, we dropped down to about 10 or 12. Things started to get a little more dicey, especially with DFS. With 80 megahertz channels, we have 6, kind of. These 3 are blocked off because of Doppler weather radar. So you can't use them, which means we have 5. DFS hits another couple of those. So we have 2 non-DFS 80 megahertz channels, 5 total. You were going to have to kind of make some evaluations of where that makes sense, because obviously 3 channels in 2.4 runs into issues. 5 channels with 3 of those being DFS may also run into some issues. So because of that, the speeds that you can actually expect to see are going to be a little bit lower. So in green are what we expect to see in phase 1. So 40 megahertz channels, 3-stream clients. When you're close to the AP, you can expect about 606 megabits of connected data rate, about 600 megabits. You do need a higher signal strength than what we have today. From what we're hearing, to be about 6 dB. So it's getting about half the coverage area of the 300 to the 450 megabit coverage area you have today. So it is getting fairly small. If you have a fairly high AP density, for voice, video, or just for client density, you should be OK, and you should be able to see a fair amount of that improvement. If you're at 80 megahertz, you get the 1.3 gigabits for your 3-stream clients. Your smartphones can get 433 megabits, and tablets, which we expect to start being 2-stream, will get up around 867.
There seems to be some confusion, and maybe you can clarify. This chipsets that have come out, have been announced so far, they have to support 80 megahertz channels, is my understanding.
Yes.
As in even a smartphone will have to support 80, but you won't have to configure your controller, for example, to support 80. So it's as in the chipset will support 80, but you can still use 20 or 40 megahertz channels. Is that
Exactly.
your
Just like
understanding?
11N, you had to support 40 megahertz, but you could get away with just doing 20 megahertz channel plans everywhere. You'll be able to do the exact same thing with 11AC. So 80 megahertz is a mandatory part of the standard. Just because it has to be supported doesn't mean you have to use it.
Sure. So the phones will support it, and I think they have to support 256 QAM even.
Yep,
all the current
256 QAM
Broadcoms.
and 80 megahertz are kind of required. Basically,
Yeah.
what you see coming in phase 1 here is all the stuff that's required by the standard. The others are optional. So 160 megahertz channels are optional. Multis or MIMO, optional. 8 streams, optional. And I don't think we're going to get to go from 3 streams to 8 streams either. I think there'll be a generation of 4 stream products. A couple years later, we may get 5 or 6 streams. Whether 11AC even ever actually makes it to 8 streams will be up in the air. 11N was allowed to have 4. It's never going to get there. We're going to leapfrog beyond it, straight to 11AC. From an AP planning point of view, okay, I'm getting the signal to go faster and to wrap up. AP planning point of view, we're expecting similar coverage areas, similar receive sensitivities. So if you have a good 11N network today with 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, that'll carry over. Obviously, networks that were planned 5 years ago weren't really planned towards the client densities that we're seeing today. So it's not going to be a simple rip and replace for those devices because their networks aren't healthy to begin with. Beyond that, in theory, you can support, because you have that 1.3 gigabits on the second radio, about 450 on the first. You could support 1.7 gigabits connected data rate. You could, in theory, start to max out the single 1 gig Ethernet port. That is something to consider. You may want to have a second Ethernet port. I don't think it's going to be common. I don't think it's going to be happening all the time. And it may not even be best practice for most customers to pull a second cable. But something to think about for your high density areas, your high throughput areas to keep in mind. And our expectation is a lot of the APs will be similar to the current generations of APs. They're going to be, from a power draw point of view, there'll be a little bit more, so there'll probably be some reduced functionality on AF, but AT power will be required for full. And that's what we're kind of expecting to see from most of the people out there without giving any details on who's doing what, when.
So Chuck's job's going to get even more complicated with doing high density stuff.
It is.
With AC.
It's going to get even more complicated.
It's 256 QAM.
Yeah.